Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome. Happy December and welcome to our December Remento webinar. It is so great to be with everyone who's joined us today. My name is Charlie Greene. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Remento. And on behalf of our entire team, I want to express my deepest gratitude for all of you making the time to be with us today. I also want to let you know that we are recording this webinar and we're going to be sending out an email with the link to the recording later this week. We have a really exciting agenda for all of you today. I want to start out by sharing a bit of the context about why we started Remento in the first place. Then we're going to do a deep dive into how the product actually works, from selecting prompts to recording stories to preparing your book for printing. And then we are incredibly honored to be joined by Sky Bergman, who is an award-winning documentary filmmaker who has dedicated much of her work to celebrating the stories of some really incredible aging adults. And then finally, we reserve space for a Q&A, which will be an opportunity for each of you to submit your own questions about Remento and about how the product works. So with that administrative business out of the way, I'd like to transition over to an overview of why we set out to create Remento in the first place. You know, each of us on this team has a different reason for caring about the preservation of family memories and stories. And for me personally, my own passion for the space stems very much from personal experience. It was 9 years ago that my mom was diagnosed with lung cancer. And I remember feeling absolutely terrified after hearing that news and being really scared that she may never have a chance to meet her grandchildren. And having lost my dad a few days before my 10th birthday, I knew firsthand how painful it was to wake up one day and not have someone you love so much. And I also knew how much I would have given to be able to, in the years after he passed, hear his voice for just one more time. So right before my mom started her chemotherapy, we sat down to record some of her best stories, and we were in effect creating a time capsule of her legacy, which was designed as a way to introduce her to the family she may never have a chance to meet. And frankly, what I thought I would capture in those recordings were the stories that I had heard my entire life growing up. But what blew me away was how much I learned really for the first time about my mom, from the moments in her career that she had never talked about to the stories of her falling in love with my dad that had simply never came up in our family. And as I reflected on those conversations, I couldn't help but think to myself, why had it taken my mom getting cancer for me to really get to know her in a way that was far more meaningful than many of the conversations we'd ever had before? And why, with multiple cameras in my pocket, at any given time, had I not thought to record those stories for the future, just in case? And it was from reflecting on that experience that the vision for Remento was ultimately born, which is to make it incredibly easy for families to celebrate and preserve and protect the stories of their family by making it delightfully easy to document those memories that have made each of us the people that we are today. Now, as many of you know, we are known for our flagship product, which is our Remento book, which we refer to as our no-write memoir. And that's because the final product is a hardcover, color-printed keepsake book full of stories created without having to write a single word. So with that being said, I'd love to transition over into a deeper dive of how Remento actually works. For those of you who have been using Remento extensively, this is going to be a little bit of a review. And for those who are considering using Remento in your own family, I hope this makes it clear that we're really doing our best to make the journey of preserving legacy as simple and straightforward as possible. So to get us started, we'll begin on the Remento website. You can go to remento.co, or you can just Google search the word Remento. And then from this screen, you tap the big login button in the upper right-hand corner of the browser. That is going to invite me to sign into my fully private Remento account. Now, for many things on the internet, you're going to need a unique password. But at Remento, we don't actually use passwords, but instead rely on the security of your email to protect your account. So once you type in your password, or once you type in your email address, you'll receive an email with a link to sign in. And then you can click on that link in your email to be logged in directly to your private Remento website. And that's exactly where I've landed right here. Now, it's worth noting that the experience I'm going through is on a computer, but you can do the same thing from any device, whether it's a tablet or a smartphone. Now, right now I'm looking at the prompts page, and that's because I'm a host for my mom, Claudette, who I purchased Remento for. And that means I have the opportunity to customize her experience by selecting the prompt she'll respond to over the course of the year that she has access. So I'm going to go ahead and click Add Prompts, and you'll see that there are a few options that I can add. The first is to use questions as prompts. The second is to use photos to inspire her memories. And the third is to invite her to vote on prompts. I'm going to click add questions, and I'll see that I'm looking at a list of questions that have been personalized for my mom specifically. All of them have been generated using the answers I provided about my mom when I first set up her account in the first place to create personalized questions about her life. I can also select from trending prompts on Remento. These are the most popular questions asked of our storytellers. And then finally, I can review the Remento question bank, which is a curated list of hundreds of questions developed by experts sorted into categories. I also want to point out that if I want to write my own questions as well, I can. To do that, I just press the pencil button in the top right corner. Now, let's go ahead and add a photo-based prompt to my mom's queue. I tap Add Prompts and select Upload a Photo, and then I can see that there are actually a few different ways to add that photo. I can add a photo from Facebook or from Instagram. I can add photos from Google Drive or from Dropbox, or I can manually upload a photo directly from my computer. So I'm going to go ahead and manually add a photo that I have on my desktop. This is a photograph that I'm adding of my parents that's taken from their wedding day. And now that that's been uploaded, I'll edit the question to read what is happening in this photo and what makes it so special. And then I'll go ahead and add that to my mom's queue. Now, this view right here shows my mom's upcoming prompts, and Remento makes it really easy to rearrange the order if I want. I can simply drag and drop any of these prompts to change the order in which my mom will receive them. Now, these are all the prompts I added for my mom, but if I had bought Remento to document my own stories, the process would be exactly the same. And by the way, my mom is set to receive one of these prompts per week, but either of us can change this setting to make it either more or less frequent, and also change the days of the week that she'll receive those invitations to record. Also, when you click Add Prompts again, there is an option to create a poll for your family, from your family, so that family and friends can vote on exactly what they want to hear the most about. And speaking of family, my sister actually has a ton of amazing photos of my mom's childhood. So I'm going to invite her to add some of those to my mom's queue as well. To do that, all I have to do is navigate to the Invite Family button at the top of the screen, and then I can invite her by email or just copy the link and drop it into the family chat. That's going to make her a collaborator on my mom's project, which means that she can pick prompts and will be notified every single time my mom creates a new story. Now, speaking of new stories, I want to now bring up the experience of my mom as a storyteller, which is the exact same whether she received Remento as a gift or purchased the product for herself. You can see in this screen we're looking at on her iPhone, and she's just received a new message from Remento that it's time to record a new story. Now, for the record, my mom is signed up to receive both SMS messages and also emails. So she'll receive a notification when it's time to record via both text message and also email. When she clicks on that notification, you can see that she's brought directly to her email, where she's got an email from Remento letting her know that it's time to record. Here you can see that she's got a preview of the question being asked, which in this case features a photograph. So she'll go ahead and click Share My Memory, and she'll be brought directly into the Remento recording studio. Now you notice that she's greeted by name without any logins or downloads or passwords. And that's because the recording experience is accessible via the secure link that was just sent, meaning she can start a private recording in just a few taps. And this experience can be done from any device whatsoever, including your smartphone, tablet, or laptop. Now, at this point, she can either change her prompt or continue recording this one. Here, she'll go ahead and press Next Step. And now she has the option to tell Remento if she wants to record video or audio only. Now, one of the things that we hear all the time from storytellers is how they don't want to be recorded on video, whether it's a bad hair day or bad lighting. Everyone seems to have a different reason. And that is such a shame, because when we talk to families, they tell us how much they love watching these recordings. So to all of my storytellers who are on this call today, if you are willing to give video recording a shot, it's something that your family will be, I guarantee, really grateful for you having done. So my mom selects video and is now asked to grant Remento some basic permissions to ensure we capture her recording. Now she taps Turn on Camera and has to allow permission for Remento to access her device. And she's done that. So now it's time for her to confirm that she's happy with the way she looks. And because she is, she can go ahead and press Next Step. And now whenever she is ready to get started, she can press the big green button and begin recording. So she presses Start Recording, and after a 3-second countdown, she is now recording. Now she can go for up to 30 minutes, and there is no perfect length. And because there is a photo here, I want to show you that she can press the expand button on the upper right part of the photograph to be able to see it in full screen. So she'll go ahead and tap the button, and now we can see the photo in full screen. Now, to exit the screen, she just taps on the X in that upper right-hand corner. And if for whatever reason my mom wanted to pause her recording, she just needs to hit the pause button in the bottom. And that's perfect if she needs a moment to get a drink of water or answer the doorbell. Now, when she's ready, she can tap resume to continue recording. And now that she's done, she can press stop. Now, on this screen, she can watch the recording, decide she wants to retake the recording, or she can submit it. In this case, she did a wonderful job, so she will press submit, and that's it for her story. And as a quick reminder, she can record as many stories as she wants within the year that she has access to Remento. There is no upper limit. Now, if she wants to, she does have two other options. First, she can record another story. She can catch up on prompts that she may have missed, or respond to prompts that are trending on Remento, or even add prompts of her own. Or second, she can view her stories, which will move her from the recording experience back into that private website where her stories actually live. Now, let's bring it back to my world. Because she has submitted a recording, I, along with all of her collaborators, receive an email letting us know that there is a new story to check out. You can see that Remento has automatically summarized the content of that recording and is inviting me to play the entire recording. Of course, I want to watch this, so I click and am brought back into the private Remento website, and here you have it right here. On the left side, you can see my mom speaking about the photograph, and on the right side, you can see that Remento has taken her recording and transcribed it into a word-for-word transcript. You can see that the first sentence reads exactly the way that my mom said those words. And that's because when I set up Remento for my mom, I indicated that I wanted Remento to provide her words exactly as she said them. If I click the edit button in the bottom right, I can now see that I'm in what we call the writing assistant. I can click edit my story manually, and you can see I can edit the text however I want, changing words, changing grammar, changing phrasing. I'll go ahead and make some punctuation changes here. But let's say the transcript of this video is feeling really long, and in some cases, perhaps a bit scattered. I can go ahead and click edit, and I'm back at the writing assistant screen. Right now, you can see that cleaned transcript is selected by default, but I can change the story perspective to either first or third person. If I select first person, that means Remento's speech-to-story technology is going to take her words and turn them into a polished story written as if she had written the story herself. So I'll go ahead and press first person, and you'll see that Remento is giving me the option to select the length of the story that I want. I'm going to go ahead and make that story a little bit longer. And then I'll press generate preview. And what Remento is now doing is turning that transcript into a restructured written narrative using my mom's language and tone, written as if she had sat down and written it herself, or potentially hired someone to do it for her. You can see the first line reads, "This photo was taken on the happiest day of my life leading up into that point." Now let's go ahead and see what the third person looks like. I can click on the edit button, and I can see that Remento has generated a new version of the story now in the third person. It's about the same length, you can see, as before, but it now includes a new title and tells the story as if a biographer were writing a story about my mom, Claudette. You can see it says, "It was the happiest day of Claudette's life, at least up until a point." Now, this version is great. I'll go ahead and click save, and now all of those changes have been saved directly to the account. And as a reminder, all of this text is completely editable and can be changed at any time. Now, this storyteller has a photo. This story already has a photo, but let's say there's one more that I want to add. I can go ahead and press add photo, and then I can find another photo on my desktop that I want to add to the story. In this case, it's a church from the place where my parents got married. Now, once the photo is uploaded, all I have to do is press done. And now that the photo has been uploaded, it is now saved to the story right alongside that first photo. Now, my mom shared a really beautiful story here, and I want to let her know how much her sharing those details matters to me. So to share a reflection, I can simply click on the heart icon at the bottom of the screen, and doing so will allow me to send my mom a reaction message about the story she's just told, which will be emailed to her directly. Now, my mom is a really prolific storyteller and has been using Remento for a while. So if we close out of this page and head over to the stories section of the private website, you can see that she has recorded dozens of stories. Some of them are from her children. Others are far more recent, like a photo of her dropping me off at college. And we actually have a lot of images from family heirlooms that she has recorded the stories about. Now, in her case, I uploaded most of these photos into prompts, meaning that she was looking at them as she told the story. But photos can also be uploaded to a story after it's been recorded, which is a really nice way to bring a story to life. Now, speaking of ways to bring stories to life, it's now time to go ahead and create our book. I can press on the Order Books button on the left side of the screen and see that I'm brought into a screen where I can customize the cover of my mom's stories. Now, it's on this page that I can add a photograph to the front cover. I can customize the text, and I can also change the color of the book. And then I can press Next, and here you have it. This is the opportunity to see inside the book. I can specifically exclude stories from being included and reorder the stories that I'd like to include, dragging some up and moving others down. In my case, I want to make them chronological in the book for her. And then I can tap Next to confirm that I'm ready to move forward and preview a copy of the book itself. So on the right, you can see a preview of exactly how the book will be laid out. We've got a table of contents at the top, and then each chapter includes a QR code. And what's, of course, really special about Remento is that when you scan those QR codes, it'll play the recording that was used to write that story. And let me show you exactly what that looks like. Here we've got a copy of my mom's Remento book. You can see it's printed in color. It's 8 inches by 10 inches, and it's printed on double thick paper. And if anyone scans the QR code at the start of each chapter, they will be able to play the recording that was used to write that story. That way, no one in your family, whether it's in the next year or 100 years from now, is ever going to be without your story or the sound of your voice. So that concludes a walkthrough of how our product works. As a reminder, if you have any questions whatsoever, you can always reach out to our customer support team by emailing support@remento.co, and we will be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. So up next, we have a real treat because we have the legendary photographer, professor, and documentary filmmaker Sky Bergman with us today. Sky directed the critically acclaimed film Lives Well Lived, celebrating the secrets, wits, and wisdom of age, where she interviewed adults aged between 75 and over 100 years old about the moments that shaped them, the lessons they carry, and the legacies they leave behind. Sky teaches media and photography at California Polytechnic State University, San Luis Obispo, where she mentors the next generation of storytellers and leads projects rooted in memory, family, and human connection. That's all the fancy stuff from her bio. I'll just say before we dive in, I met Sky almost 4 years ago after having watched her film Lives Well Lived, which is an incredible work that I would recommend that everyone on this call views if they have a chance, and was so inspired by Sky's work and her commitment to elevating the stories of people with stories worth sharing, that I was completely hooked and enamored with her work, and a lot of what she's done inspired the vision, the mission, and ultimately the product associated with Remento. So I'm a huge fangirl of Sky's, and it's my absolute pleasure to have her on the webinar today. Sky, welcome. It's great to have you.
Oh, thank you, Charlie, and thanks for that amazing introduction. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, well, we're so happy. Your film, again, for anyone who hasn't seen it, Lives Well Lived, is an incredible work that highlights just amazing stories of in many cases everyday people. I know from our conversation, Sky, that your 99-year-old grandmother was in many ways the spark for the amazing film. I wonder if you could start out by sharing with our audience about her and how her life and her legacy informed your interest in this space and ultimately the creation of the film.
Oh, yeah. I always tell my students the more personal, the more universal a story becomes. And this was certainly a very personal experience for me. I was looking at approaching 50 and looking for positive role models of aging and just not finding them out there in the media. And here in my own life, I have my grandmother who is 100 years old and still working out at the gym. She didn't start working out until she was 80. So it's never too late to start something new. And anyway, I just started really videoing her cooking in the kitchen because she was an amazing cook, but never wrote a recipe down. And so I thought I didn't want to just have the recipes written down, but I wanted to hear her voice and see the gesture of her hands as she was cooking. And that was my first foray into filmmaking. And then when she was turning 100, I went with her to the gym to film her working out. And because I thought, oh, nobody's going to believe that she's still working out at the age of 100. And that was really the beginning of this idea for this project. I didn't know it was going to be a film, but I knew that I needed to find other people out there that were like my grandmother, who were living full and interesting lives, and also had an incredible story to tell. would say that everyone has a story to tell if we just take the time to listen. And so I spent 4 years interviewing 40 people with a collective life experience of 3,000 years. And that became the documentary film Lives Well Lived, which is still airing on PBS. And the subject of my book, Lives Well Lived Generations, all the lessons that I learned from interviewing these amazing people and hearing their stories. So I've been very, very lucky. Thank you, Grandma.
Well, for those who haven't seen the film, the portion that includes your grandmother could be just by itself an entire film. So I love the idea of you using that experience to become a documentary filmmaker and quite literally becoming a documentary filmmaker as you created this film. I'm curious to learn, what did you learn as you evolved from interviewing someone you love to then interviewing, I guess, 39 other people about how to be able to collect from them the kinds of things that, the next day, the next year, 100 years from now, we're going to be so grateful to have documented.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that I love about Remento and loved about seeing in your demo is all these questions. Having really good questions is so important. I learned that you don't want to ask yes or no questions, because that's where the conversation will end. You want to ask open-ended questions that allow for people to really share their story. And I think that also people knew that I was doing this project out of a love of my grandmother. And so I think that they were more open to sharing their stories. And I would come and meet them and have a cup of coffee with them or tea or whatever, and no cameras. We would just have a conversation before the camera gear came out, so that when we were doing the interview live, it felt a little more like a conversation. I think that's really important. And I love that with Remento too, the same thing. There's not this distance, I think, it makes it very easy for people to share their stories. And I've been interested in people's stories since the time I was young. My mom reminded me that when we would have these, I'm Italian, we'd have these big dinners, Sunday dinners. Anyone that's Italian will know about these Sunday dinners that go on for hours. And when the food was done and the fruits and the nuts and all that was coming out at the very end, that's when the stories would come out. And I would get a little tape recorder, that's going to date me, and just put it on the table to record the voices of everyone and all these incredible stories. So I've always been really curious. And I think that's what it takes, is being curious and having the patience to just let the stories kind of unfold.
I love the vignette of imagining the Italian dinner table with the stories unfolding, maybe after a couple of drinks and a wonderful dinner. It's when the magic really happens. I'm curious, what kind of advice would you have for someone who's thinking to themselves, okay, I know I need to get some great questions, but also for whatever reason, I'm feeling like, I don't necessarily know that I have what it takes to be able to ask the kinds of questions that, of course, a documentary filmmaker could go out and ask. Sky Bergman is best in class. Like, what advice would you have for the person that's thinking to themselves, I'd love to be able to get to the root of some of these stories, but I'm just not exactly sure how to get there?
Well, I think, one of the things I have on my website, all the questions that I asked everyone, I spent about 6 months coming up with the questions. And I think that, it's really great on Remento. You have all these questions that you've already come up with. That's super helpful, because I think just to sit down with somebody and say, tell me about your life, that's almost overwhelming. It's nice to have some starter questions, at least to get the ball rolling. And one of my favorite questions was, tell me 3 interesting or fun facts about you. And that could go off in any different tangent. So I think really not being afraid to ask the questions, make sure they're open-ended, and allow for, I found that when I didn't speak and I just listened, and sometimes you'd have these, long pauses, but then the stories would come out. So you have to allow for that time for that to happen.
Yeah, we one of our advisors, I remember very early on, telling us that the most powerful question you can ask is just pausing after you
Yes.
ask a different question. It's an incredible follow-up. I remember Sky being really inspired by, as I watched the stories of these 40 people, the kind of variety of different lived experiences that they had.
Mhm.
Uh, Several of them lived through extremely well-known cultural moments with perspectives that are important for, I would say, the collective consciousness to be able to document, because they've lived through a war, they've lived through
Mhm.
something like an internment or the Holocaust. And then there are stories of just everyday life. And I wonder how your approach changed when you were learning the memories and the stories behind those culturally relevant moments of broad significance, and then
Mhm.
also the more personal, everyday occurrences?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that for me, one of the key things that I tried to have in everyone's story was a key moment in their life where they went through something that was really difficult. Because I think that one of the common traits that everybody had in the film was this sense of resilience. And I think the second thing was to have a word of wisdom. Like one of my favorites is from Lucky Louie. He says, "Happiness is a state of mind. You can be happy
Mhm.
with what you have or miserable with what you don't have. You decide." And everybody has a one-liner like that. And so that was important. And then I think thirdly, I really looked for a moment of humor because we all need levity. It's really, the world is tough out there and there's a lot of really heavy things, but having levity and having humor and being able to laugh really helps us get through some of the tough times. And so when I was putting the whole story together, I was looking for those key things because and that was evident in everyone that I interviewed had at least one of those things.
I'm curious, to someone who's on this call who's thinking to themselves, maybe I haven't been elected to public office. Um, Maybe I don't feel like I have amazing one-liners. Maybe I don't feel like I'm hilarious. Like, I wonder what the message for them is about why it's important to share their stories with people they love.
Well, my grandmother would always say that, like, why are you interviewing me? Why is my life so important? And I think that everyone has something that they have to share. And I think that it's so important to get it out there, to let the next generation hear their stories, because that's a way that we can relate to each other. And one of the things that I've become really passionate about is connecting generations. And one of the ways to do that is through shared stories, through bilateral conversation. There are so many times that we are separated by distance, and a lot of young people don't know. Maybe they have grandparents, but they don't really know them, and because they live so far away, maybe they see each other once a year. And so I think that having that touch point, being able to connect in that way and through shared stories, is a wonderful way to make that happen. And it doesn't have to be something monumental. Plenty of people in the film had nothing that was monumental that happened to them, but they lived life. And if you've lived life, you have some amazing stories to tell and some things to share that can really help shape and change maybe a young person's life, and to make them rethink how they're moving through the world. I think it's really important to connect on that level.
Yeah. The point about intergenerational connection is something that we're spending a lot of time thinking about. There's been tremendous amounts of scientific research about how understanding who you are, where you've come from, especially among younger kids, can boost resilience, a word you used earlier, across
Hmm.
every dimension that resilience can be measured by: self-esteem, aptitude, being able to overcome challenges when posed, because you know that your family, you come from roots where that kind of adversity has been faced and the family has weathered through. I'd love to know anything else you've learned about the opportunity around intergenerational connection and why that specifically matters.
Well, I think that I kind of took for granted that I grew up in an intergenerational household. I mean, I grew up with four generations. My great grandmother actually lived to be into her late 90s, and I was 19 when she passed away. And we lived with she lived with my grandparents. We lived with my grandparents, and so I was blessed by this household that had all this wisdom and knowledge and love and warmth. And so many people don't have that. And I think that when I did the film, I was lucky enough to have a professor here at the university where I teach at Cal Poly who saw the film and teaches a class on the psychology of aging. And she realized that we were both at the same university. By the end of the week, we were having lunch together and we were figuring out how can we bring generations together so that young people and older people can learn from each other, and can, live in such an age segregated world right now. What can we do to break down those barriers? What can we do so that instead of it being an us against them kind of thing, it's so we are all together? And so we show the film to older adults and to students, and then they use the questions that I formulated for the film to have it start a bilateral conversation. And then there's a big wrap party at the end of the quarter or semester, depending on the university where it's happening. And it's just amazing because at the end of that time, what the students and the older adults always, the overarching thing that they've learned is that they have far more in common than their differences, and really the only difference is their age. And what a gift that is.
Yeah, what a gift that is. I'm curious to know what you've observed, what you've learned as you've seen people interview members of their family, in your case, your grandmother, versus people interviewing or being interviewed by maybe friends. And then in the last case, people being interviewed by a professional or a student, someone they don't know, and how the level of connection, predefined connection, changes the kind of nature of how the conversation unfolds.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you one kind of tiny little aside, and then I'll delve into that because I think it's really important. I had a student, I always tried to take a student with me when I was doing these interviews, and I had a student, his name was James, and he went on the interview where I interviewed this really lovely Italian-American guy named Lucky Louie, who used to make fresh mozzarella every morning for his daughter's deli, and very loquacious and funny. And after the interview, James said to me, "Wow, I never knew older people could talk so much." And I said, "Well, don't you have an older person in your life?" And he said, "Well, I have a grandfather, but we don't live close and I don't really know him that well." And I said, "Look, I'm your teacher. I'm giving you this assignment. It happened to be right before Thanksgiving. I said, I want you to take these questions that we just asked Lucky Louie, and I want you to ask them of your grandfather. And you can blame it on me as your teacher that I'm making you do this, but I really want you to do this as a project." And he came back from that weekend with a grin from ear to ear. And he said, "Thank you so much," because they wanted to have a conversation and a dialogue, but neither one of them knew how to start. And having those questions made all the difference in the world. It opened up the space for them to have a conversation. And so I think sometimes in our own families, it can be the most difficult because we don't know how to start the dialogue. So I always say to people, blame me for the list of questions, blame Remento for the list of questions, but that sometimes breaks the ice to get the dialogue going. And then I think sometimes it is easier to have an outside person interview a loved one. I know that when I would go into some people's homes, sometimes there'd be a sibling or a son or a daughter. And after the interview, they might be sitting in the background. They'd say, "Wow, I never knew that about my mom or my dad." And part of it was that maybe the way that I asked the questions, or because I was an outside person, they might answer something. I think it kind of speaks to your point about your mom, where you had a preconceived idea when you started of what she was going to answer, and it turned out to be something totally different. And so I think allowing that to happen, allowing to unfold, and I think that you'll be surprised at what happens. So there definitely can be a difference between having an outside person interview, but also I would encourage you just to try, because sometimes people want to tell their story, they just don't know how to do it.
So beautifully said right at the end. It's one of the things that we use different language to say, but the sentiment is there. Blame us if this doesn't work. By the way, we have a 30-day money back guarantee, so the risk is low, but blame us if the question about your childhood bedroom that you most appreciated, the detail from that bedroom that resonates most, or how you got to elementary school, if these questions don't lead to the kinds of things that you'll be glad to have documented, put that on us. But yeah, in our experience, 95% of the time, they lead to things that are net new and create real joy. And the thing that I love that you said is recognizing that it's a two-way gift when these conversations happen. And it's both a gift to be able to share your story with someone who's younger, because whether it's a family member or not, it's important for them to understand the lessons that can be imbued from your life. And the second thing is that it's a real gift to share with someone your curiosity. Especially to your point earlier, as we live in a society where older folks have increasing levels of loneliness and isolation and depression because of the way that we don't spend time with them. So you're hitting on all the things that we care about.
Well, and I would also say that young people suffer from a very similar social isolation and depression. And so bringing those two groups of people together to work on something like this, I think, is really important. And you kind of do that because you invite people to participate. So it's not just one person asking questions. A lot of people can get involved. And I love that. I think that that's a wonderful way to collect stories so everybody feels part of it. That's important.
Yeah. Well, You mentioned Thanksgiving earlier, and we have the holidays coming up. It's
Yeah.
December, and so in the next 2 weeks, there'll be a lot of people who are with their families, and we're going to make sure that in the recap of this webinar, we will send out your list of questions for the holidays if you're
Okay.
you're okay with us doing that. I'm curious if you have any other advice for people who are going to be with their extended family, maybe their grandparents that they don't see that often, about how can they get comfortable breaking the ice, in addition to all the things that you shared around either blaming Sky Bergman or the
Well, I think sometimes it's just sitting down with somebody, maybe having, like what I did was having a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and just, I mean, I'm Italian, so the food thing comes up, right? If you have food together, you break bread together. Sometimes that leads to, it's not like this forced thing of we are going to have a conversation now, making it something that's more comfortable, that organically lends itself to having stories told, I think is really important. So it's not like the person feels like they're put on the spot. That's not what you want to do. You want to make it happen a little more organically than that. I think that once somebody gets used to it and they're on board with wanting to answer questions, that's great. But until they get kind of that feel of it. And then I think also sometimes what I found was showing people what I was working on really helped.
Mm,
So showing examples of what it could look like and what it could be, even if it's somebody else's story, I think that is pretty nice. So, using your website where you can show this is what it could look like. Look at what a legacy you could leave. I think that's really important as well.
yeah, they say if you can see it, you can be it, and
Yeah,
so
exactly.
realizing that you
Exactly.
don't have to. It's one of the things that we've learned is that the idea of writing a memoir can feel really intimidating because it feels
Hmm.
like you have to have reached some degree of closure in your life to be able to write it, which of course you will never reach until the point at which you can no longer actually write that thing because you're no
Right.
longer here. I think what we try to remind people is that actually capturing a collection of stories about your life is a
Hmm.
really beautiful way to be able to bring the lived experiences that made you who you are to life in a way that you can get started at any point. You're never you're
Yeah.
never you're never too young or too old to get started.
Yeah, I was going to say that, when we work with the students, we have them answer the questions as well. So it's not like this is just for older people. This is for people at every age. And I think that that's really important, that you don't think you have to reach a certain moment in time that, okay, now I'm going to start writing something or thinking about my memoir. It's kind of like, I know I wrote about my life in my 20s, and I love looking back at that and seeing what my
Mm,
20-year-old self thought at that moment and what were the key moments in my life at that point. So I think it's great, no matter what age you are, to have kind of this document. I mean, obviously, as we age, we start thinking a little bit more about our mortality and how much or little time we have left. But no day is promised, so it's great to have that no matter what age you are, to think about answering some of these questions and reflecting, because it's also, when you're answering these questions, it gives you a moment to reflect and pause and think about what's really important and what the connective tissue is in your life, and what makes you happy, what makes you passionate, and continue on, and what do you want to pay forward. I think those are all important things at any point in life to be thinking about.
so beautifully said. I have two more questions for you. So my second to last question is around the surprises that you've uncovered
Hmm.
over the work that you've been pioneering and pursuing. I'm curious, as you've interviewed at this point many more than 40 people, and you've
Yeah.
seen students come together with aging folks and been able to be privy to what that connection looks like and how valuable. I'm curious if there's anything that stands out to you as particularly surprising to you as you've experienced this journey and reflected on it.
Yeah, I think that one of the really interesting things that I found, because I found that everybody that I interviewed had four key elements that were in common. And the biggest surprise really was like, these were older adults who were living full lives, who were very happy, who I want to model my life around. And I think the like number one thing was they all had a sense of purpose, and that sense of purpose could change over time. And I see that with my college students. Sometimes they'll come in and talk to me, and maybe they're changing their rager and they're waffling because they don't have a sense of purpose. And so I
Mhm.
think that that was one of the real surprising things of how important feeling like you are a part of something bigger than yourself is so important, and that you're giving back in some, that sense of purpose is about giving back in some way, I think. And the second thing was that having a sense of community. And the surprising thing was it didn't necessarily have to be family, it could be friends, but having a community around you that supported you, supports you, that you could call on no matter what. I guess because I had so much family growing up, you know, to find that it could also be friends were just as important as family was really interesting. And then I think the third and fourth thing kind of go hand in hand, which is this sense of resilience, which I said before, and kind of this attitude of positivity. I mean, it's amazing what the people in the film went through and how they were able to overcome some of those things, as you mentioned before, internment during World War II or the Holocaust, and how these people were still able to stay so positive. But I would also say that young people these days are dealing with their own set of issues, like unfortunately shootings in schools and, you know, things like that, that they have to overcome and deal with. And so that sense of resilience and positivity at every age, I think is super important. And those are things that, you know, I found that in older people, but as I was working in this intergenerational space, I found that those same things applied to younger people as well.
Hmm. What a powerful opportunity to be able to understand the things that have given meaning to older individuals and try to impart that into younger people. Purpose, community, resilience, humor. Like these are all things that I imagine academically we can appreciate, but actually hearing someone reflect on how those experiences and how that disposition has positively impacted their life, I imagine that could create a lot of good in a younger generation.
Oh yeah, I see it every time that we do one of these intergenerational projects. And at the end, when the students are doing their big presentations, and what an impact it has made to have an older adult that they have talked to, that they've learned from, you know, firsthand. I think it's one thing to read about things in a book, and another thing to experience it and to have that firsthand lived experience and to connect with somebody on that level. It really is quite impactful, and especially somebody in their 20s who, like, I'm thinking of the college students that I've dealt with who maybe have never had a conversation with an older adult other than their parents or a teacher, you know, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
they're dealing with people that are maybe in their 70s, 80s, even 90s. And it's just, it's like you can see the light bulb go off, and it's just
Mm,
so wonderful to watch that.
mm. Sky, it has been such a pleasure speaking with you. This conversation was everything I expected it to be, and more. We have an amazing Remento community, many of which are logging on live today, and many of whom will be watching virtually after the fact. We're going to include in our show notes shortly a link to your website, skybergmanproductions.com, where folks can learn more about Lives Well Lived, the film, and also the book, Lives Well Lived Generations. Is there anything else our community can do for you to be helpful?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm working on 3 new films right now, and they're all on the website, so I'm not going to take the time to describe them now, but you can look at them if you want to donate to help make them come to fruition. That would be wonderful. We're starting the film festival run with all of them, and all of them have in some way a connection to older adults and or that intergenerational component. So I hope you'll check them out.
Well, we'll make sure that we send a follow-up so that everyone can know exactly where to access all of that. Sky, your work is amazing. It's inspired me. And yeah, I'm so grateful that you were able to join us today. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it, Charlie.
It was a pleasure. Well, that was as much of a highlight as I expected it to be. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and we'll transition now into our live Q&A. And I want to share exactly how that will work, so all of you know how to add questions. You'll see on the top right-hand side of your screen, there's an option to add your questions by typing on where it says post a message. So you can either add your own questions or you can upvote other questions. And we're going to be responding to questions based on the number of upvotes they have. So the questions with the most upvotes will be the ones that we respond to first. Also, please note that at the top of the chat, there is a link pinned for you to share your feedback about the webinar. And if you do, you'll be entered for a chance to win one of 2 free Remento book credits. So with that, I'd love to go ahead and start taking questions. And our first question comes from Gary. Gary's asking about how many words are there per page in the Remento book if you don't have pictures? Gary, I do not know the answer to that exactly, but what I can do is I can show you one of my mom's Remento books, pages, and it looks like this. So let me get back to you on this. I don't actually know the exact number of words per page, but I'll send you a note, Gary, with an exact number as soon as we can get that calculated. It's a great question. Margot is asking, does the book and transcript support other languages? So we do support other languages. The Greek alphabet can be printed in our book. At this point, we are not able to either understand Greek words being spoken or translate either from English to Greek or Greek to English, but that's something that is on our roadmap for the new year, and we hope to be able to soon. Carolyn is asking, how long do we have to complete our book? A year from purchase. So when you buy Remento, you're getting 1 year of access and a credit for a hardcover book. And that means at any point during that year, you can redeem that credit and print your book. If at the end of the year, you're not ready to print the book, you can extend your subscription for either another full year at a discounted rate or on a monthly basis. And so many of our storytellers need a little bit more time. And so we make it really easy to be able to do that. John is asking, what is the most amount of pictures you can add to one story? There is no limit. You could have one story with pictures that fill a full book. So no limit. That was a great question there, John. Thank you for asking. Next question comes from Rob. Hi, Charlie. Was wondering if you had thought about having the capacity to have someone remotely control the storyteller screen for those who might struggle. It's a great idea. We've spent a lot of time thinking about remote context and how to be able to best support. In our testing, that's actually added a decent amount of complexity, which is why we spent so much time focusing on the core Remento storytelling experience, which again, you can access via email and also SMS text message. So we make it really easy for someone who is 70, 80, 90, or even over 100 to be able to open up their phone, click on that link in their email or text message, and then be able to record. So Rob, it's a good idea. We've certainly thought about it, and I don't have any exciting developments to share on that front, but it's definitely something we're thinking about. Marlene is asking, can we upload a short story narration or video already created in either MP3 or MP4? That's also something that's on our roadmap. At the moment, you're not able to upload an existing video or recording. We do have some storytellers who will hold up another device that is playing the existing recording next to either their speaker, their microphone, or their camera. That technically works. It's far from ideal, but this is on our product roadmap, and we'd love to be able to offer this next year. Tina is asking, what happens to everything after the year program? So all of the content that gets created with Remento is designed to be private, secure, and exists in a capacity where it can be accessed after you have no longer an active subscription with us. So with Remento at the end of a year, all of the content that you've created is accessible via the QR codes that live in the books or by logging into the platform. And very importantly, you can also always download any and all of the content if you'd like. And we recommend that. So you can download your recordings, you can save them to your own local computer, you can back them up to a Google Drive or a Dropbox. But again, just to answer your question very concretely, these recordings are accessible to you and your family after the year without issue. They can be downloaded at any time also. Thanks, Tina. Sylvia is asking, should a husband and wife use the same Remento program or separate? Our recommendation is definitely separate. So we would buy for one of our storytellers, and then we would buy a second Remento for the second storyteller. And this allows them to be able to have separate experiences. But what we do invite you to do is ask similar questions and upload similar photos to each account so you can collect their different perspectives. But what we found is when you have two storytellers sit down for one recording, our ability to be able to understand who's who is really compromised, especially when there's interruption, which is, from our research, rather inevitable when you're putting two members of a couple together. Thank you, Sylvia. Ellen is asking, can you somehow upload a picture from an actual photo from 50 years ago so it isn't on my phone or PC? Yeah, you absolutely can. And There are two ways to do this. The first would be just to use your camera to be able to just snap a picture of that photo and upload that as a prompt, or to add it to an existing story. The second thing you can do is take advantage of our partnership with a company called Legacy Box, which will mail you a physical box that you can put your photos inside, mail the box back to them, and then they will digitize those photos and then mail the box back to you so you have them for safekeeping. So it makes it really easy if you have a large collection of photos to be able to digitize those photos and have them added directly into your Remento account. Debbie is asking, are we able to reorder the stories as we go along? Sometimes I tell them out loud, out of order, and want to be able to put them in chronological order to help with my thought process. Absolutely, the answer is yes. I think in the demo earlier, we showed that the prompts can be organized. The prompts can change in the order that they are sent to you. You can also take stories that have been recorded and change the order in the bookmaking process. So you can change the stories that are included, and you can change the order in which they are recorded to be either chronological, group by theme, or any other order that you would like. So Debbie, thank you for that question. It's a great one and very important. How do I turn off the AI telling some of my stories? Toby, great question. So in your settings, in your project settings, there's an ability to set the default mode as either being a cleaned transcript or the first person or the third person. We find generally that the majority of our storytellers do like the speech to story technology to take some of the pressure off of saying things perfectly. But if you'd rather have the stories told directly as you told them, you can log into remento.co either by typing that into your URL or by Googling the product. You can also access any of our emails and click on where it says Remento, and then navigate to your project settings. And then there's a place to be able to change the default perspective from either speech to stories, first person or third person, directly into the cleaned transcript. It's a great question. Thank you, Toby. Ron is asking, I would like to add a few sentences to stories I recorded months ago. Is that possible? Yes, absolutely. If you log into Remento, your private website, there's a little button that says add to story, and you can record an additional recording that will be added to the end of that previous recording. The other option you have is if you want to add content, but you don't want to record it, you can always just edit the written story and write that content in manually. So those are two different options that hopefully meet your need. Thanks for asking that question, Ron. Yvonne is asking, I was gifted an account for Mother's Day 2025, but I have not started recording yet. Can I still catch up recording multiple stories per week? Yvonne, you can record 50 stories today if you wanted to. There's no limit to the number of stories you record over a year and within a week, a month, or a day. So we know that for a lot of people, there can be a little bit of a delay with getting started for a variety of different reasons. Life is busy. And so, yes, the answer is all of the prompts that have been sent to you, you can record in whatever cadence or frequency you'd like. You can also pick your own questions if there are questions you want to answer that haven't been asked, either the prompts that you've selected or members of your family have. And you can do that either by recording one, and then at the end of that flow, just click record another, or you can log in to the website using your email address, and you can just go through the prompts that are in your queue and just hit record now. So you definitely have some different options, but the answer is yes, absolutely. Marika is asking, my parents share an email. Can I purchase each of them a Remento, but on the same email? So the short answer is yes. There's a workaround that we have for this. Technically, we have to have different email addresses. You can simply add a plus to the second email address and add a unique character field after that to be able to make it so that Remento can see them as different people. So this is something that we've run into in the past. Marika, if you reach out to support@remento.co, we can send you special instructions on exactly how to do that. You can also, in our help center, just search your exact question, and we'll provide instructions through that medium as well. But it's a great question, and we do hear that. Janet is asking, we received a subscription to Remento for Christmas last year. However, we do not know when it was actually purchased. How do we know when our subscription is complete and we can no longer record stories? So your subscription began on the day that you received an email saying that you had been gifted Remento. So it doesn't matter if it was purchased 6 months before that. If you received Remento on Christmas morning, you have until Christmas morning of this year to be able to record your stories, at which point you can decide to either continue recording new stories by extending your subscription or just spending a lot of time between now and then recording stories. So you have flexibility. And again, we have a monthly option and also an annual renewal. The annual renewal is less expensive per month than the monthly option. Natalia is asking, hello, is Spanish one of the languages you can submit? Yes, we support English and Spanish at the moment. John is asking, your system flagged several of my pictures because of resolution. Will they still be used? Yes, they will be used. We just want to make sure that when you open up your book, you're not surprised by some low resolution images. So when you upload an image into Remento, we will flag that the image is in low resolution if, for example, it's grainy, but the photos will in fact be uploaded. They will be printed into the book. They just won't be as clear if you had higher resolution, won't be as clear as if you had higher resolution images. It's a great question. Thank you, John. Pearl is asking, how many pages in a book? So our books can be printed up to 380 pages long. Included in your purchase is a book credit. That's good for 200 pages. And if your book needs to be between 201 pages and 380, there is a surcharge of $30 to be able to print and ship that book to you. Sarah is asking, is there a way to extend our membership if we want to accomplish if what we want to accomplish is taking longer than a year? 100%, yeah, either monthly or annual. You can go ahead and extend that subscription, no problem. And if you have any issues with that, you can reach out to support@remento.co to make sure that we get that all set up for you. No problem there. Carol is asking, can I change the background when video recording myself like I can on a Zoom meeting? You cannot do that, unfortunately. We don't have that baked in as a feature. So unfortunately, you can't change your Zoom background. Sorry about that. Robert is asking, is there an expiration on the subscription? The subscription that is purchased as an off-the-shelf kind of version of our product is good for 1 year. So it's good for 1 year from the date that the gift was delivered to your storyteller, or if you bought it for yourself, purchased by you. So at the end of that year, you've got the opportunity to extend your subscription either on a monthly basis or for a year. Natalie is asking, can you buy more than one book? As many books as you'd like. Absolutely. So your account comes with a free book credit. Occasionally when you join webinars, we give away free book credits as well. If you need to print more books than you have book credits for, you can go ahead and you can purchase as many additional books as you'd like. Those books cost they cost $69. And then if they're longer than 200 pages, it's an additional $30. By the way, all those books are color printed. They're hardcover. They're printed on double thick paper, and they're really designed to stand the test of time. So yes, Natalie, you can buy as many books as you'd like. Eileen is asking, how do I get the additional month? So in your subscription settings, if you log into Remento and go to the project settings, you can navigate to the subscription section of Remento, and you'll be able to see exactly where you are in your subscription. And if you need to extend for another month, you can do that. We also send emails right around the time of your renewal that will invite you to opt for either renewing for another year or for just a single month. And Eileen, if you have any questions, just reach out to support@remento.co and we'll share with you exactly how to do that. Karen is asking, is there a maximum size number of pages for the book? Yes, 380 pages total. 200 pages are included in your book credit that you purchase upfront. Gloria is asking, can I look back at what prompts and stories I have already recorded? Absolutely, Gloria. Yeah, it sounds like you're a storyteller. So you can, at the end of your recording, click View My Stories, and that will bring you into that private website that showcases all of the stories that you've recorded, all the photographs that have been added, all of the upcoming prompts that you have, and also the written stories that have been developed using those recordings. So all of that is accessible by just clicking View Stories, or at any point you can click on any of the emails that you get and just click the word Remento, and it will bring you directly into your account. Lisa, love hearing from Remento, but the amount of emails sent can be a bit overwhelming. Any way to request a few less emails each week? 100%. And yeah, sorry if it's overwhelming. It's most overwhelming if you signed up to get prompts more than once a week. And so our recommendation there is you can go into your project settings and you can indicate exactly how often you want to be getting prompts, when you want those prompts to be sent. And then there's also other settings where you can reduce the number of emails that you get. For example, you can say, I don't want to get reminder emails. I don't want to get new prompt emails. I don't want to get any of the different kinds of emails that you send. So yeah, Lisa, a lot of different ways to be able to reduce that volume, because especially if you're signed up for getting stories, for example, every day, that can really add up. Sandra is asking, can you go back and upload pictures to a previously recorded story? Yes, you absolutely can. So once a story's been recorded, you can log into our website and you can add as many photos as you'd like to a story that's been recorded. Carol is asking, how do I post and submit photos? So Carol, you can simply, once a story's been recorded, if you are a storyteller, just click view recording at the end of the experience. You can log in and you can upload the photo just by navigating over to the story. And if you have any questions on that, just reach out to support@remento.co. We can send you the exact help article with a video that shows how to do that. We'd be happy to. How do I know how many pages my book contains? Oh, this is a great flag, Pearl. At this point right now, we are not able to just easily share with you the number of pages that are in your book. The easiest thing to do is just click on order book, even if you're not ready to yet, and you can go ahead and preview your book, and it will show you a PDF preview that indicates how many pages are in that book. So at any point in your journey, if you're curious, you can just click order book, go to the preview. Don't worry, you're not going to be ordering the book, and it'll show you how many pages are in that book. And I think this will be the last question that we have time for today. Karen is asking, can I provide more than one book using the material that I provided? Oh, can I create more than one book? Yes, you absolutely can. Remento makes it really easy to take all of your stories and kind of remix them across different books. So if you want to create a book that has every single one of your stories, you can do that. And then you can subsequently create a new book that only includes a subset of those stories, potentially even, presented in a totally different order. So yes, we have tons of flexibility in the way that you kind of remix the stories that exist within your book. And so that right there is all the time we have for today. Just as a reminder, we have in the chat a link to our feedback survey. Please take a moment, if you can, to share feedback. We're going to be offering 2 different free book credits to people who are on the call today who complete the survey. So thank you in advance from doing that. The holidays are right around the corner. I hope everyone on this call has a wonderful holiday with friends and family. If you are a Remento storyteller, good luck. Keep up the work. I promise it will pay off. If you are a Remento family member, a host, or a collaborator, keep your storyteller engaged. Share with them lots of feedback. Because ultimately what they're creating is incredibly important. And if you're a prospective customer, we hope that what you've heard today in Remento inspires you, whether it's using our product or otherwise, to go out and capture the stories and memories of the people that you love most. So on behalf of our entire team, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you massively to the amazing documentary filmmaker Sky Bergman for joining us. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day and a wonderful holiday. Cheers, everyone. Take care.